Hi, everyone. I'm Val Evans. Thanks for watching. Tonight, I'm talking about Laci Peterson's prediction. And we often wonder when we talk about different crimes, if we could see ahead, what would we see? So I've got a lot of different charts for you tonight. And if you don't know anything about forensic astrology, you can always go online and download my book. You don't need Kindle for that. Just go straight to your phone. I've had a couple of questions about it. So Forensic Astrology 101, using timestamps to investigate unsolved mysteries. So it's been so long since I feel like I wrote that book. I can hardly remember the title. But you can also look at some of my charts on Instagram at Forensic Astrologer. And please stick with me when I talk with Jennifer Brazier on Friday, the evidential psychic. We had a really good session last time, and we thought that maybe we should continue talking about some of the missing kids in the Cleveland, what we call crisis, because there seems to be a lot of news about the missing kids, so many missing kids in Cleveland. So that's coming up on Friday. I believe it was 7 or 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to double check with Jennifer. And I'm just going to say hello to everybody. Thanks, everyone, also for joining my channel. We've got some new members, so welcome. I really appreciate your support. And Angel's here. Toy, I keep saying toy, but is it toi? I'm not sure. Natalie, good to see you, and Allison. So I guess we should get started here. Let's add some of these. Hold on 1 second. Let me start at the beginning. And so the first thing I'm going to show you is we're going to look at the transit progression charts for a couple of people tonight. One is Scott Peterson's father. Now, here's a little trick if you are looking at your own chart and you want to make your own predictions and you don't want to hire an astrologer to do it. There's a very interesting way that you can see what's happening to you right now. Now, if you if you had a father in your life or a father figure in your life and you want to draw his birth chart, that's the head of the family. And you can draw that chart. Look at the fifth house. The fifth house lord will be you. So anything that is trining that planet in your parents' chart, really I like to use the father's chart, it's going to show you what's going on. If you are experiencing great things in abundance, or if you're just getting hit with malefics and very, very difficult planetary energy. So check it out. Oh, okay. So it is toy. Okay, perfect. So I was right all along. I think some of you have been probably following the missing girl case, Charlotte Sena, was it? And she was found. So I think a lot of you already know that. And I did a chart for her this afternoon. It seemed like it would be developing pretty fast, and they did apprehend someone. So it'll be interesting to see how that person will have Leo characteristics. And Venus was in Leo and was really pointing to the perp. So sometimes that's not a female, but it's at least someone who has Leo qualities. And the other thing that I saw in that chart was Mercury opposing Neptune, which can show lack of boundaries with children. So I'm so glad they got the perp, and I worry for her because it's really going to affect this child over the long term. Hopefully not. So here's Lacey, and sorry, I've been hurrying so much, but it's Laci, not Lacy. But Lacey met Scott Peterson in 1994. Scott Peterson was he was a waiter, and they met at a cafe. And so on their first date, he took her out fishing, and she got seasick, and so they had to come back. And so, a very interesting way of how they would start their relationship. And of course, most of you know, some of you who were watching remember that day on the news when we heard about this lady who went missing, who was 8 months pregnant, and we didn't know what happened. But then the news reports started giving us more information, and that was that her husband went out fishing on uh, Christmas Eve. So it just, the whole thing from the get go seemed shady. And so I think the country at the time in 2002 was just riveted on this story, and they just felt so awful for Lacey. They were married in 1997. He proposed in 96. They both opened a sports bar. And I thought that was significant because Peterson is a Leo name. SON means sun. And that is a word that is represented by Leo. So they opened a sports bar, another Leo type of energy, sports, and they worked. They did that between 98 and 2001 until Lacey wanted to settle down. And so in 2000, they made the decision, and then I guess in 2001 they moved to Modesto. Her mom was there, her family was there, uh, close to her brother Brent, I believe his name was, and just a really sweet girl with a lot of friends, warm family, very fortunate girl or lady, and so excited to get married to this guy who seemed like he was enterprising. He was good looking. He just seemed to check all the boxes. And so I just also added that 2002, Lacey became pregnant earlier on that year. And then Scott actually met Amber Fry, his mistress, 1 month before she went missing. So, right. Now, here's the crime chart. I thought I'd put this in. We're really not looking at the crime chart, but I mean, that's what this channel is all about. So I thought I'd put this in here. This is for actually December 23rd. And one of the reasons I picked this time to look at is that this was a trustworthy time. This was the last time that her sister saw her, which is just heartbreaking to even say. So the location was Modesto. Her whole family seemed to be very enterprising, and so was his. So her sister ran a salon, and said that was the last time I saw her. So I drew the chart for that. Now, for this time, the ascendant is Cancer. So that would be Lacey. And so we would look at the moon. And so interesting that moon is next to Jupiter. Jupiter rules the husband traditionally and is in retrograde. So it looks as if around this time, and it makes sense because they were together when she saw them, but this would also be a good crime chart too. But what is Jupiter and moon? It is fame, big fame, but not the kind of fame that you want. And it is squaring 3 points, 3 planets in Scorpio. So Scorpio in the fifth house can be another woman. And there you go with, it's kind of crazy. Look at how Venus is a woman. Next to Mars, what was the woman's name? Amber. So that would be a Mars type of, I guess, type of name. And it would be a secret woman. Pluto secret, Venus is woman. So there would be some type of square there where, maybe Jupiter in retrograde showing. Now that shows Scott, but also Saturn does as well. And Saturn is in her 12th, or the victim's 12th house. So it's an odd time to pull, but with Saturn in retrograde in Gemini, it might show that, he's on the phone, he's communicating, but weird how it shows that it could be maybe somebody else new. Maybe he had some kind of somebody to help him. I'm not sure. I didn't get that impression, but it sure looks like at the time they were at the salon, there was a hidden enemy that was with her, and that would turn out to be her husband, sextile Jupiter. So, so much in Pluto, or so much in Scorpio, in the sign of sex and death, and then also another important part about this chart is that Uranus is opposing the victim. It's a huge shock that's about to come. So something that you would be able to see if you were to pull this the day before. So of course it was the day after this that she went missing. And so now I want to go to their wedding chart. If you've ever seen a wedding chart, it's quite a chart. First of all, I'm sure there are a lot of people who've gotten married when Jupiter was in retrograde, but it ultimately shows that potentially, and I'm using ancient astrology here, the groom could be seen as weak or a disappointment. Now, with the conjunction to part of fortune, you would think that would be helped out a little bit, that maybe he would be successful somehow. But you see that in the bottom of in the third house. Now, the groom, and I'll show you, you can see how the ascendant shows the groom and the descendant shows the bride. So what we do is we look at it like breadcrumbs. What rules the ascendant? It's Jupiter, and there he is in retrograde. And it happens to fall near Uranus and Neptune. Uranus being a big shock, and Neptune is, well, it's fishing, which is where he said he was going when he dumped her body. So it's also in Aquarius, which can show just a complete shock. Sometimes it can show accidents too. But in this case, he is in Aquarius. Potentially, he wants to be independent. Another representative of Aquarius. So, and again, this is the wedding chart. So, what do we want to do? We want to look at this cluster here, where the groom is, and we see these two red lines, and we're like, well, what does that mean? How is this going to affect the groom? And so that's one of the things as an astrologer you want to kind of look at and see. Sometimes it's not so bad. There might be, I know in some wedding charts, it's a wonderful couple, but they've got to move a lot. Uranus is in their first house. So all through their life, they were going to move from town to town for different reasons. Maybe it was the groom's, profession or whatever. So you want to kind of take a look at see what the stress is here. And so on this end of it, Mars and Moon. Now, many of you know that just Mars and Moon, forget Chiron that's in the middle of all that, Chiron meaning wounds and scars. Mars and Moon show abuse. And not that Lacey had any abuse that we know of during their marriage, but in the end, something very abusive would happen in the marriage being Libra. So that's the couple. So wounds, and the other thing too is that Moon is there again. Moon meaning fame. So a famous couple would come from this chart. So kind of eerie. Here's another thing with this is Laci and Scott Peterson's. Okay, this is Lacey's transit progressions. And here's another way that you can see your prediction if you go into AstroSeek and you'll go to the tab that says just transit and progressions. And it's a little bit faster than progressions. I mean, the progressed chart takes a while to move along, but if you really want to see what is coming up in the short term, you're going to look at transit and progressions. So now here you can see that, actually this is mislabeled. This is still their wedding chart. And So I'm going to get to her transit progression in a second. But the wedding chart, this is the other side of, okay, you see this red line, it goes up to the sun. So this is his ego, I think. His ego brought him down. You can see that red line opposition. It's like tumbling down. So the groom fell because of his ego. And you can see in the fourth house, there's Saturn there. So Saturn, I think, maybe could have been his dad. So his dad was supportive of him and helped him through, uh, all of the things that he did. So, okay. Now, this is the transit wedding chart. So you can see predictions for your marriage if you use your wedding chart. And this was an interesting one, seeing all of those planets in the 12th house in Scorpio. That was the one thing that I came away with here. And it was like when I saw the wedding chart, I didn't really see much Scorpio, but that doesn't matter because when planets go through Scorpio, it's going to cause a square. And in this case, you can see the T square, which is the red triangle. So, you've got Venus and Mars, which can show behind the scenes relationship there. In the 12th, nobody sees it. Nobody sees those sex secrets that are happening. And the other thing too is I circled Pluto there. Pluto is pregnancy. So it looks like this being in that first house of the chart, squaring Venus and that stellium there, which is represented by Lacey, because she's the descendant in Mercury. And so Mercury is up there. I labeled her. You can see the square to Pluto. So meaning that she would not be able to take this to term, this baby. So you can also see a big blue triangle there too. And it's being activated by none other than Jupiter retrograde up at the top in the 9th house. And that's got, if you were to look at the transit at that moment. And so there's something going on with his ego. And it's almost like it's clashing. I've seen this too with Chris Watts, where it's almost like they want to replace their families. They want to change their families. And here it's more like he's doing something. He wants his ego to be fed, but he is being held back. And also, what does the ego do when something like this happens? You want people to see you in a good light. You don't want people to see you as the person who wants a divorce. So he's thinking this might be a gamble where, he's suddenly in his twisted mind, he wants to, just have everybody feel sorry for him and think he's a widow. So that big red T square is just a nasty one. And also our favorite, and I might have called this out here. Let me see here. No. With, you see that black moon Lilith in the 5th house? It's going through the house of family. The other thing too, notice with the wedding chart itself, Saturn in retrograde in the 5th house. This is death of a family, despair of a family. And it is really being activated with Black Moon Lilith. Black Moon Lilith is coming around there, coming up to the 5th house, and it shows. I mean, let's face it, Saturn is also a father. So a father is acting in a shady, devious way. We just see Black Moon Lilith so often in these crime charts, and it will really change the way somebody sees you, or the way you see somebody. Suddenly their eyes go black. So, and that's Black Moon Lilith. Yes. So let's see here. Now, here is Laci Peterson's transit progression the day of her death. And it looks pretty complicated. And you'd look at it and you'd be like, oh, there are lots of trines there, lots of blue lines. It doesn't look that bad. But when you look a little bit closer, you can start seeing some things that don't look right. And first off is, if somebody were thinking, well, what's my husband up to? You would look at this chart, if it was your transit progress chart, and you would see that the descendant is in Scorpio. Now, this might just mean that your husband is very good in real estate. And at the moment, because remember, this is the progression, it is usually not something that you start out with in your birth chart. This is going to be moving. And with Pluto and Mars representing the seventh house, you can look around the wheel and see where they are. And so Pluto is in the sixth house and it's trining Neptune. So that shows a lot of fishing, a lot of potential deception there. With Neptune, it's and probably getting away with it to some extent, especially with what he was doing in the weeks. It's hard to believe it was like just a month when he had met Amber and decided. But I did look at the charts beforehand, and it seemed like they were having trouble about a year, at least a year beforehand. So, so the other thing too is look at how Uranus is up at the very top of Lacey's transit progress chart, and the moon would bring down. Okay, so it's like a falling down. And the moon is very fast when it moves. So you're going to see this a lot. So there's going to be a bunch of things that are in place at the same time. But look at how Uranus, this is transit Uranus. Of course, it's going to move slow. It's going to be very slow. It's going to be very methodical. It's going to start in the, probably, I guess when she was born, maybe, in Sag. And so now it's in Aquarius, and it's moving toward what? That green symbol up at the top is the moon. And the moon is home, a complete breakup of the home. And so that in itself is a very tough transit progression. Now with Jupiter, look at that black moon Lilith in the 12th house running over the Jupiter, which is the planet of the significant other, the partner, the husband. Again, it is transiting over. And interesting how Jupiter is in Mars, like, he's very angry, or he was very ambitious or aggressive. And that stellium there with Chiron is many, many wounds. And also in this chart, look at the 8th house. The 8th house is the 8th house of the killer, and it's in Sagittarius, which rules the husband, Jupiter. So Jupiter and Sag ruling the 8th house of death. So there's probably 100 other things you could get from this. Check out her ascendant, and it's a dangerous time when your ascendant starts moving through, especially either you or your partner. Suddenly the marriage or you, just something's not right there. The devil is in the house, and it can show strangulation. It can show obsessions, even shopping addictions. But it's a lot of addictions, a lot of obsessions. And so that takes a while to get through there. It takes a couple of years. And the best thing you can do is just be very aware, go to church. I mean, alcohol is the devil. So, do what you can. And it happens to everybody. It certainly happened to me when it was affecting my 7th house, my descendant. And I was married. We had the perfect relationship, and suddenly it changed, and it's like I didn't even recognize it. I don't think he did either. So it was like It was like we were both different people. So, and it was for a few years there too. So, a lot of drinking too, by the way. It was almost like it was just around party people, but it was excessive. So it's just a dangerous time. And if I thought back, I would probably think, maybe I would probably go to church more and just be more aware, I guess. I know, I know. I usually don't talk about that kind of stuff, but now you know why I talk about alcohol so much because I know that that energy, and the energy is just it's hard to describe, but you look back on those things, and alcohol can obviously is going to go through not all of your houses, but because it's progressed a few houses. And when this happens to you, you are going to you come out of it, you're going to look back on it and think, wow. But you're also going to not regret. You're also going to be looking at this chart and say, that's what happened. Okay. And you're able to move on. And that's the great thing about astrology. Dust yourself off, keep moving. It's almost like sometimes we're in this raft and we've got to endure some of these energies. And we're either going to get stuck by the side of the riverbank, or we're just going to keep floating down the river. Do we have a choice? I don't know. That's a whole other show. So, okay. So this is just bringing that out a little bit more with BML, and because I was talking about it, I'm not sure if you saw what I was talking about, but this is Black Moon Lilith, and it's moving over Jupiter, which is Scott. And, Mars, I'm going to say that's Amber, because Amber, that's her name, and they're together, and they are. Was that the 12th house? Yeah, that was the 12th house. So secrets, the 12th house of secrets. And in Aries, I would say secrets with Amber, even though she didn't know. And she was very helpful to the police and, acted as a witness. What a whole nightmare for her, I'm sure. Now, here's another thing with the transit progressed, if you noticed in the chart, Saturn. Saturn can be tough. It was in retrograde, and at the time of her murder, this is December 24th. This is the day when Lacey was taken out. I guess, I don't know how he did it, but through some ruse, I'm trying to think through that day. And it's so interesting because one of the big things in that case was how he had said that Lacey was watching Martha Stewart, a food theme, if you'll recall, which is Taurus. And so that would be a big point in the case. Like, well, he knew what she was watching. He must be telling the truth. But anyway, at some point, he had her and, put her in his silver stainless steel boat or whatever it was, which would be Moon. And Saturn here is in her transit progressed. It's coming over Mercury. Now, Mercury is a little baby. So, and it's retrograde. So at this point, Mercury in retrograde, it's not going to move from Mercury retrograde. And sometimes it can show if you're going to have a child during this time, it can show that there's going to be some type of chaos around the baby. It might just be, in the beginning days or something. But for her, Mercury was in retrograde representing the little baby. Saturn conjunct Mercury would be the death of the baby. I think we all do, Toy. So, so Natalie, you said, I might be the only person in here that believes they got this case wrong. Interested to hear your thoughts on this. Now, this is Scott Peterson's dad, And like I said, you can pull a father figure in your life. If it happens to be your dad, the person who, if you did have a father figure in your life, pull their chart. Sometimes you get tired of looking at your chart and you're like, there's not anything else I can see here. Okay. And sometimes you just need something with you have fresh eyes on. So pull your dad's chart and take a look and then add your transits. Also look at his transit progressed chart. Look at the fifth house Lord, and that's you. And so you'll be able to see what's hitting you every time there's a transit that's affecting his chart. And it's pretty amazing. You're going to see, you can even look back in time, when you were in high school or whatever, and be like, oh my God, that's what was happening. So hopefully all good. So this is Scott in Lee's chart. This is Laci Peterson's chart. And the fifth house ruler is Jupiter. And it's at 28 degrees. And what is 29 degrees? That is Sheet, which is the point of disaster and also despair and great tragedy. So you take that, and then you've got this trine to Pluto, which means a huge disaster. So one example of when a trine isn't so good. I'm actually surprised that Jupiter is direct there and not in retrograde, but sometimes they're in shade. You just have to check. In Pisces, well, what did he do? He was big into fishing, so loved fishing. It was a big part of his life. He had a guy help him put his boat in the water that Garagos didn't call as a witness. Small boat, no body. Garagos thought he'd already proved his case and didn't need him. Wow. Okay. Thank you, Natalie. Well, because you saw how I was confused when Saturn was in Gemini there. And you're not always going to have two people when you see Gemini. You're going to have, the split personality or whatever. But yeah, that would reflect that two people, at least there was one killer and one accomplice. So very interesting. Natalie, you always have some good background for us. Okay, so again, Scott Peterson's dad's chart, transit progression, December 24th, 2002, the day that Lacey died. I'm sorry, I misspelled her name again. Uranus this is his fifth house. Laci Peterson's fifth house, Uranus is coming through it. So it's upsets with the family. And it's conjunct Black Moon Lilith. And then it's conjunct almost pretty much the moon. Moon meaning a famous moon in Pisces, a scandal, famous scandal. So you're really seeing that fame there in his transit progressed chart. And here's the full chart. You can see how on the day of her death, Neptune in an opposition with Mercury. Mercury is a child, a little baby. Leo is family. So you can see how, the Neptune, when you have Neptune transiting one of your houses, it can show that house goes missing. So it's like his family suddenly disappears. He doesn't have family anymore. So that's part of what he was experiencing at this time. Suddenly, he was expecting a grandchild and he has a daughter-in-law, and then poof, they just disappear. So that's a one thing here with him. And let's see. So at this point, though, for the progressions, the fifth house is going to change. And so he is going to change from Jupiter, and he's going to be Uranus or Saturn. So Uranus is in the eighth house. So and moving in on Algol territory, if you can see that in the later degrees of Taurus. So that would be Peterson or Scott Peterson in the eighth house. So also you can see Saturn also represents the fifth house for him. And what's next to Saturn? The south node. South node, hopefully you guys can see that, is that you have to let your sun go. And sort of like sun is left behind. It looks like it's right at the last degree of Aries. So yeah, but it's just, it is in transit with the moon there. And you would think, I'm trying to think of what else you would want to look at for dad. Ultimately you'd want to pull something like this and try to figure out if the sun did it. So, but look at how Black Moon Lilith is moving up onto Saturn in the seventh house. So Saturn is Scott Peterson being affected by Black Moon Lilith, the devious, black-eyed, crazy point. Now, sometimes every planet has a good and bad side. So you're going to see Black Moon Lilith when it's doing well. Maybe somebody in the work or in the environment is very sexy. There are good connotations if you're looking at celebrities or that kind of thing. Usually that's stuck in the middle there of some stellium where everyone thinks that they're very appealing. Oh, wow. Okay. Scott is 100% a liar and cheater, but said he knew if he didn't attempt to keep up the lie that they'd stop looking for her and immediately focus on him. His ego was his downfall. Thank you. Yeah, 4 months that they looked for her, and you can almost just, you can't, but just feeling for her mother. And her mom wrote a very touching book about her daughter, which I highly recommend. I wish it was available on Amazon, but it's not. Is sheet 29 degrees Cancer or 29 degrees of any sign? It's actually 29 degrees of Pisces. And often when I read people, I'll ask them if they ever had like some kind of accident when they were a kid. It's usually when they were a kid, and they will have something happen to them where they almost drowned, or they were involved in a big hurricane or flood or something like that. It's usually water related. So yeah, straight to water. Water would be big in this chart. So Neptune, and just like Chris Watts, we had Neptune, but for him, for Chris Watts's wife, Shanann, she would have a lot of Neptune, but it would be oil for her. So so Black Moon Lilith is really, a big star in these charts. And I think for Lacey's transit progressed chart, the big ones I'm seeing are Ascendant in Algol, which, anybody who is she's probably, what was she? I don't know what her ascendant is, but there's going to be a lot of people who have Algol as their ascendant, their progressed ascendant, and they're not going to die. But it is a dangerous time. It's a time where things aren't as things aren't all they seem. Let's just say that. So if you want to look at where she is in this chart, we look at Venus, and wow, look at how Venus is in the third house of transportation, and she's in Cancer, which is the color silver. So she's in a boat, and it's opposing the ninth house and Mercury, which could be two people, but so strange. You don't really know what she's going on, what's going on with her in the other parts of her life. So, you've got a lot of stuff happening here, relationships with others, maybe problems with things that are coming up with friends or what have you. But the moon at the bottom of the chart is opposing her progressed moon, and it's hitting her fifth house there. So, anyway, like I was saying, one of the things that I think is the most important here is Algol on the ascendant, Jupiter in the 12th house, which is her significant other, but in a stellium with Mars and Chiron. That's pretty big. Also, Uranus coming over her moon, and that's transit Uranus. So that's still going to go pretty slow. Now, as it was backing up, and it goes back and forward in retrogrades and all, or I should really say, when it's in the earlier degrees, Uranus means to move too. And that's what they were doing. They were kind of changing things. In the 10th house, she was changing her career. She was putting the sports bar behind her and wanting to start a new family. So these things were all being manifested by that Uranus energy. So, yeah, and then of course the 8th house it's ruled by Jupiter, which represents Scott. And the wedding transit chart is so interesting because of the T-square there with, what is the cause? You want to know what the cause is of the stress. So you look at the apex of that triangle, and you've got that 12th house. You've got a man and a woman, and that's what's causing all of this. It's those 12th house activities, the sex that you can't see, and his ego. And it's almost like something, from way back, a tale, a very tragic tale, because I want to say Shakespearean, but I don't want to go that far. It's just this man who is wrestling with his ego, I guess. Okay. Natalie knows a little bit about this. Girl, yes, he was on the phone pretending he was in Paris. Yep, trying to keep his lie up. The police were recording and just laser focused on him day one, and that made it 10 times worse. They had witnesses on the stand that gave them a clear path that she went for her walk with the dog and made it back home. Police lied about the date the burglary happened. I know, exactly. I remember that. And that was just something that you wouldn't expect. They had to, that was just a whole other drama that was going on at the same time. So Toy says, I never trusted his girlfriend. Interesting. And the bodies weren't even close to being decayed in water for 4 months. She was dismembered with no organs as well. They only found her torso. Ugh. Yeah. Yes, that's right. Remember, this was from the movie. Wasn't he messaging his mistress while he was at Lacey's vigil, saying hi from Paris? He was, yeah. So a lot of stuff going on. Yeah, and the 12th house, he's lying to his girlfriend, saying he's in a foreign land. So you could maybe say that there is some 9th house going on, 9th and 12th. So you might get that from this chart. But the other thing too with the transit on the wedding chart is Saturn. When Saturn goes through the 7th house, it's so hard, and it's like a coldness, and it's trining Mars, which is the representative of the 5th house, meaning Amber, the lover. So Saturn in the 7th is that in general, he's cold. It's in Gemini. So it's like he's cold towards when she speaks. She doesn't want to hear her speak. So that's part of that, I think. And then Lacey, of course, being Mercury right at the top in Virgo. She's a very good communicator. And how about on the day that she died, the moon was conjunct her Mercury, moon meaning fame. So she would be in the news. Mercury, Lacey, in the 9th house of press, conjunct moon. So famous woman, and Mercury is 2 people. So there would be 2 people in the news. Well, really 3, but her and her child. So crazy. So, and that's pretty much all I have for tonight. I hope you followed along okay. I think one of the things that's the most disturbing is when you see that those stelliums with Mars or Chiron or Black Moon Lilith, those malefics, and they're all gathered together. And sometimes it can affect, your life in certain ways. It can affect your life with a partner. And it can affect your job and your career, your family. If you have Uranus opposing a cluster of planets in your fifth, it's likely you're not talking to anybody in your family right now, and they don't really want to talk to you. And it is a long transit. So it's very difficult sometimes to try to figure out, why this is happening to you. And the transit progressions are a great place to start, I think. So, brutally honest, hi there. Scott may be a liar and a cheat, all true. Nevertheless, actual evidence shows that he simply isn't the killer. Scott was convicted by media and public opinion before he never stepped a foot in court. Very interesting. Well, he certainly had motive, and according to all of these charts, she didn't marry such a great guy. Not saying that he was a killer, but certainly showed abuse. I can pretty much I can say with certainty, with this square to Mars and Moon and Chiron, this is a man who hurt. He abused. He was abusive, and maybe it was only for that one day. We don't know. But what did he do? Whenever you see Uranus near Jupiter, which is the partner, it's like partner strikes and partner lies. It's all in the same house. Interesting that it's in the second house, which I can't make too much sense out of, except that he didn't want to pay child support. That's a possibility. But it certainly looks like a huge, huge interruption, Uranus square Libra in the marriage. So very, very difficult. But it's interesting to see both sides, I think. And yeah, that's a good point. He told his mistress his wife died before she disappeared. So, watch that movie, read the books. I think we can pretty much say on the whole that we know who did it. But if you're interested in talking a little bit more about the missing girl in New York, I'm going to be on this week, and hopefully we'll get some more details about how she's doing. Usually in those cases, not much comes out, not many details, because they don't want this child to grow up with all those details, having to deal with that. And but if we do get anything, we may see the face of the perp at the very least, see what he looks like, and see how it compares to the crime chart. One of the worst things was there was a tip that came in about a very pregnant woman getting out of a van with two guys leading her, like maybe she had to pee. The guy called Ellie immediately. Yeah, wasn't that that was a big lie, I think. So I know they found Charlotte. What a cute kid, and even the New York governor was trying to find her. She went to, I think, the campground. So lots of interest there. Just a family riding their bikes, and Charlotte saying, "Can I just go one more time around?" And that was a big, big mistake. Jupiter right now in the sky is retrograde, which means kids, Jupiter, and husbands, Jupiter, are weak. And it's so close to Uranus. So it's like shock. Could be a divorce shock with a husband. Could be husbands are shocking. And it could be kids are shocked, which I'm sure Charlotte was. So, okay. Well, with that, I'm going to say goodnight. If you have any questions, always just come on Instagram at Forensic Astrologer, and glad to talk with you. What an absolutely tragic coupling this was. And you just, your heart goes out to this woman. The Petersons, very much a Leo type of energy there. Leo, what does Leo represent? The ego. So how interesting would it be that this man, his downfall would be, according to these charts, his ego. So hope to see you this week, and especially Friday when I talk to evidential medium Jennifer Brazier. And she and I will be having a discussion about missing kids in Cleveland. So thank you, Penny D. Great to see all of you. And thank you for joining my channel. I really appreciate it. And we'll talk to you soon.